On today's show, we'll be discussing the marvelous world of macaron.
Welcome to Baking Radio. Learn the art and science of baking with author, educator, and award-winning chef, Gail Sokol. Whether you've been baking your whole life or you're brand new to the world of baking and you're looking to build your confidence and learn new skills in the kitchen, you're in the right place. This is Baking Radio.
On today's show, we're going to be discussing the marvelous world of macaron. Now, there are macaroons, which you all know about, right? And have had many times in many forms. You know the cookies I'm talking about, like coconut or almond macaroons. These are simple cookies. They're chewy. They have egg whites, sugar, lots of almonds or coconut, and they're dropped from a spoon and baked until light brown. I love macaroons, and I don't think I know anyone who doesn't. The macaron, however, is a different animal. Also a meringue base cookie or confection, macarons are made from egg whites beaten into a foam or a meringue with some form of sugar, plus typically almonds or almond flour, and the almonds are usually ground up finely, some form of flavoring like extracts or powders, food coloring, and then piped out onto a sheet pan into small rounds and baked. Not so typically, other nuts can be used as well. A macaron cookie of perfection is smooth on the top. It's flat. There are no lumps or bumps. And where it bakes on the bottom, it should ideally form what is referred to as a foot. Yes, a foot. It almost looks like an elephant's foot, kind of ruffled and almost bubbly. And when bitten into, this perfect macaron will be crisp on the outside and yet be soft and tender on the inside and chewy, very chewy. While the macaroon should get nice and brown, a fine, self-respecting macaron never takes on a huge amount of color from browning. The only color it should have is from the food coloring that you add to it. A quick history of the macaron. They were introduced in France by the Italian chef of Queen Catherine de' Medici during the Renaissance. Lucky for all of us, right? My sincere thanks to you, Queen Catherine, for hiring that talented chef. So what's all the fuss about these fancy schmancy cookies, the macaron? Well, first of all, if you have ever purchased them from a swanky bakery, they can be quite pricey. Oh yeah. They can also have many upscale flavors like passion fruit, matcha, pistachio, chocolate, raspberry, etc., etc., etc. Not to mention that macarons are almost always paired in a pas de deux, that beautiful ballet dance of two people, with a mouth-watering filling between them. Fillings like buttercream, fruit curds, ganache, delicate jams, and so much more. They are a feast for the eyes, spectacular in every sense of the word, truly a feast for the eyes and the mouth. But now, everywhere, there are folks like you and me who deign to make these magnificent confections ourselves at home. Yeah, how dare we? Can it be done? It may be like catching a wild monkey, but I say anyone can make the elusive macaron. But there's a caveat. It will take some practice. And that is why I am here. No one should be intimidated to make these cookies. And if they don't turn out the first couple of times, no worries. Because the truth is, and this is a hard truth, all macarons are delicious, even the imperfect ones. It is true because I've made many, many, many imperfect macarons. And you know what? I got news for you, sweethearts. A lot of professional pastry chefs have also made a lot of imperfect ones as well. They're not so easy for anybody to make. Yes, macaron can be fussy to make, but never give up and never give in. You can do it. So after making macaron a gazillion times, different ways, and really inspecting each recipe and each method of mixing and shaping and baking and yada, 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 I feel like I can give you some pointers to get your best macaron ever. So now I'm going to give you my best macaron recipe. It's actually in my newest book, Baking with Success. It's also on my website, chefgailsokol.com, and I have a great video on my YouTube channel to show you exactly step-by-step how to make it. So here goes. Are you ready? So in a food processor, you are going to grind 1¼ cups of almond flour and 2 cups of confectioner's sugar. You're actually going to grind both the flour. I know it's already flour, but there's still little bits in there of almond. You're going to keep grinding it for a good 2 minutes, stopping the machine, scraping it down, and keep going several times to pulverize all the flour even more. Now, if you don't want to use almond flour, you can use 1⅓ cups of blanched sliced almonds. No skins is what blanched means. So you want to buy them blanched, and they do come blanched. Now you're going to take this almond flour or ground up almond and your sugar, and you're going to push it through a fine sieve. Yeah, the recipe's a little fussy, but it can be done, and it's worth it. And it's less expensive too. So push this mixture, this flour and sugar mixture, through the fine sieve and discard any large pieces of nuts that won't go through. Get rid of them. Eat them. Throw them under the rug. I don't care, but don't put them in with your macaron. Next, you're going to take 4 large egg whites that have been sitting at room temperature and place them in your perfectly clean, dry, no grease electric mixing bowl. Using your whip attachment, you're going to beat these whites until they're foamy, and then you're going to add a few drops of the food coloring you have chosen. And it should be a gel-based food coloring for the best results. Keep beating on high speed until soft peaks form, and then slowly add 3 tablespoons of granulated sugar, a tablespoon at a time, and beat on high speed until you get firm peaks. You know, when you stop the mixer, pull your beater off and hold it up, and whatever meringue is stuck stands up in firm peaks, like the Himalayas. Next, you're going to transfer this meringue to a large bowl, and in 2 additions, you're going to fold in that nut and sugar mixture with a rubber spatula, never over mixing. Now, the batter should be almost like a cake batter. It should be a little thick. Next, you're going to pipe out small 1-inch rounds onto 2 parchment-lined sheet pans using a piping bag. So you're going to get a pastry bag, and you're going to fit it with a 1/2-inch plain round tip. You could even use a freezer bag with the corner cut out. And you're going to push about 1-inch diameter rounds onto these parchment-lined sheet pans. And you're going to keep about 1 inch between each macaron because they may spread a little. You're going to tap each sheet pan after it's all filled with your macaron batter. You're going to tap it to allow any excess air bubbles to be released. If you see any, you can take a toothpick and pop them gently. Now, if this isn't even bad enough, you're going to allow your macaron to dry out for about 1 full hour. Yeah, let them dry out, room temperature, uncovered. I think I took better care of my macaron than my firstborn. This is actually very fussy, but it's worth it. This is key to the smooth-topped macaron. You must let them dry out. Next, you're going to preheat your oven to 300 degrees Fahrenheit and bake them in the middle rack, only the middle rack, for 10 to 15 minutes or until they're set on top and they appear dry. Remove them from the oven, allow them to cool completely on the parchment paper before you remove them from the parchment paper, and sandwich them with your favorite fillings. Now, there are many different ways to make the meringue base for these macarons, because that, in a nutshell, is the recipe. Some recipes use a Swiss meringue, where the egg whites are warmed with sugar before beating, and some recipes use an Italian meringue, where a sugar syrup is beaten into the whites. My recipe uses the easiest type, known as a common meringue, and that is how I've gotten my best results. So in my experience, I have found the biggest factor that affects the final macaron, it's the temperature of the oven. It really is. I've made them higher than 300 degrees Fahrenheit, And I've made them way higher than 300 degrees Fahrenheit. And the perfect temperature, in my opinion, is 300. 300 degrees Fahrenheit will do the trick. They won't brown. They won't bubble. They won't make cracks. And I bake them for 10 to 15 minutes only, and only in the middle rack. I actually place a sheet pan on the top rack and another sheet pan on the bottom rack, both empty sheet pans, to keep the heat a little bit less hot from becoming overpowering for these little delicate cookies. So too high a heat and they'll crack. Trust me, they will crack. I've made many cracked macarons. Delicious, but cracked. Another major tip, pulverize those almonds and the sugar together until they form a fine powder. I like confectioner sugar because it will absorb any oils that the nuts may exude, causing them to form a paste, and we do not want a paste. After pulverizing this mixture for a few minutes, it's crucial to put it through that sieve. Don't skip this part. I did a few times. Okay, I have to be honest. I cheated a few times, and then I never did it again because I understood why. You're going to get little pieces of nuts. It's going to give a lumpy appearance. And what would Queen Catherine, she wouldn't have put up with that. She would have fired that chef. All right? That wouldn't have worked. Be sure that your egg whites have no yolk in them at all. Even a tiny speck of some yolk will prevent your meringue from foaming and expanding in volume. Trust me on this. No fat from the yolk can be in that meringue. So now you must really try to make these macarons. You owe it to yourself. You owe it to your friends and your family and your pocketbook. And you know what? They're going to be so good, you may not want to share them with anybody. Now remember, if you want to see this recipe in writing, you can go to my website, chefgailsokol.com. And I also have a fabulous video with how-to steps on my YouTube channel. On the next show, we'll be discussing semi-Fredo. Thanks so much for listening. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, my YouTube channel, and my website, chefgailsokol.com.